Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some and or a lot of money on the internet. Ideally, loaded up for discussion today, we have Movement Labs jumping 15% to $9 billion FDV on World Liberty buys, and the question of will it be integrated into government blockchain plans. Senator Loomis proposing a 200,000 K Bitcoin strategic reserve buys annually for 5 years, along with the Czech central bank wanting to buy billions of euros in Bitcoin. We'll dive into that in a little bit as well. And finally, on the NFT side, big headline coming out of Doodles announcing change of CEO with founder Burnt Toast stepping back into the role. We've also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs, plus a discussion on general market rotations where liquidity is flowing. So stay tuned for that. We have got Bread and Legendary in the co-host seats. We're ready to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is incredibly risky. We don't know anything for sure, so please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it's Wednesday. It's the 29th of January. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
GM, doing pretty well. Quite an interesting show today. Especially excited to discuss the Bitcoin stuff from both the US and the Czech perspective, because I feel it's kind of going to be a continuation of the discussion that we had yesterday with Rahim on the show as well. So I like how those two pieces of news are connecting and carrying us through the week.
I like it. Brad, are you excited today? Are you interested in any of the things in particular? What's going on your side?
Not at all. But I will tell you, last night I saw Mufasa in theaters.
No way.
And I'm sad to report that it sucks. 6.5.
No.
6.5. Yeah.
Was it?
I don't know. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but
okay. But yeah. without saying the plot details, why was it bad?
I have a problem with movies that have a good amount of time to them, but they still feel fast paced. They're like, I have this is a clear example that's not from the movie, but it is an example, right? If that's like unrealistic relationship building speed, like that kind of shit. Like, someone comes into the scene and like they're all of a sudden best friends. Like, motherfucker, you just met this person. Why are you dying for them? Why do you care? You don't care because that's just another person to you right now. You don't have the lore built up to like enjoy or give extra oomph to this. There was some of that, but the whole movie was that. I felt like that.
I like that you're consistent with that, because it's basically the same with meme coins, right? Meme coin just appears, has entered the stage, is up to 120 million, 5 minutes, no relationship building, nothing going on, and you don't like that.
Yep.
But you also
I'm not
don't
a big fan of one night stands.
Exactly, yeah.
Interesting. How long does a film need to be then, Brad? Because you realize it is a film, right? There's going to time has to be synthesized in order to
of course.
To be a film.
It just depends on how much you want to cover, right? You can have a 1 hour movie and not cover as much ground and just have a slower pace build up, good storytelling, whatever. Yeah,
I like it, and that explains. Yeah, I like that. I like the link out to the crypto stuff. Legendary.
Yeah, maybe it's just something that's broke with me. Allison gave it a 7.5, so there's hope. But that was mostly because there's animals. She loves animals, so.
There's always an explanation. Again, Legendary is waiting to make the link to meme coins again, but we won't let him do that. Let's get into the headlines as usual from the snapshot. Starting with the price action, actually, starting with the majors. Let's get into Bitcoin is flat at $102,000. Not so bad. Timeline seems to be crashing out a little bit, but Bitcoin seems to be doing completely fine. Shame no one holds any. ETH is down %. It is not 3.2K. It's not 3.3K. It is 3.1K. So there you go. Solana is also down a few percent to $231. Getting into the meme coin side of things, and Doge is at 32 cents. Trump is down 8% to $27. Pepe is just down 1%. Bonk's down 5%. WIF is actually up 16%. I wrote a tweet on that earlier today. It actually dipped beneath $1.
Didn't he get some Sphere rumors? Isn't that what was going on?
Yes. So there was some Sphere rumors, but it did dip beneath $1 as well. And then it's kind of pumped back up to $1.30 now. So it's up 15% in the last 24 hours, but probably up 30% in the last few set of hours. Pengu down another 10%. We reported on that. We spoke about how the Penguin ecosystem has kind of taken a dip since the abstract launch. We touched on that mainly yesterday. AI16Z is down 6%. MOG is up a few percent, but also down 36% in the last week. MOG was one of the CT favorites for a while, struggling, but not the only one. AIXBT is down 9% on the AI side to 45 cents, down 46% in the week. So significant bags in any of these coins would hurt right now, I suspect. ARK might be the one to point out on the other side, which is actually up 20%. They had a big announcement.
Can you look at the DeFi coins? I'm mad at seeing you go through this because you called out WIF, and again, I'm not a trader. I called out some DeFi coins like Radium, right? Like a long time ago, I wrote up a little tweet on it. I'm like, boom, this thing is making more money relative to its market cap than basically everything else. I know the DeFi Renaissance was coming because I was following Arthur. Yeah, okay. I wrote this shit back in like July. And I ended up buying a bag of fucking whiff because I'm playing other people's game. Like I wrote a thesis on this shit. I picked several coins. I just didn't make any moves on it. But I'm like, you know what? I need to not mid curve this stuff. DeFi is mid curve. I need to buy the thing that's the left curve, whatever. Been holding onto a bag of whiff dog shit since that time. And I think it's like lateral at best, maybe down now because you're saying it's under $1. Again, I don't know these things because I don't watch it. I'm just like, this is the thing you hold on to for the cycle because it's the fucking thing.
I think this is the most passionate I've ever heard you talking about a token.
Dude, I'm so mad.
Let's see. Just for the people who are newer here, we're also streaming on video as well. If you want to see these charts, we're pulling them up at the same time. We're live on X video, streaming to each of our personal profiles as well as YouTube and on the Modern Market video account as well. Legendary, could you pull up Jupiter as well as a kind of rapidly fee earning protocol? So I think Jupiter has a Jupiter actually went quite high at the beginning as well, but has really recovered recently. They also announced their buybacks. Let's pause this convo here because I want to talk about buybacks. I want to talk about these types of tokens in the segment in like 10 minutes. Let's just get through the headlines first, but we will come back to that because it's a helpful conversation to have, I think. Getting into the headlines themselves, we've got Movement Labs jumping 15% to a $9 billion FDV on World Liberty Fi buys and reporting it could be integrated into government blockchain plans. Bread is going to dive into that in a little bit following the timeline of how those pieces of news came about yesterday and some of the price action associated with it. Senator Loomis proposes 200,000 Bitcoin strategic reserve buys annually for 5 years. So that's 200,000 Bitcoin annually for 5 years. Czech central bank wants to buy billions of euros, in Bitcoin, reported by the FT. Legendary will be diving into that in a second. And then on the NFT side, big announcement coming out of Doodles. Change of CEO. Founder Burnt Toast is stepping back into the role with a little bit of a dig to the past leadership. They said execution isn't just code or partnerships, it's culture too. The extractive corpo era of Doodles is over. Interesting comment. We'll dive into that along with some commentary later on in the show. Some notable sales. CryptoPunks still selling above 40 ETH, going quite nicely. Legendary, what else is going on in the NFT market?
Yeah, let's take a look. It's actually a pretty interesting day. On the one hand, we have Bored Apes being flat at a 13.36 ETH floor. On the other hand, we have Pudgies. While it technically says they're up 1.25%, it doesn't really represent the whole story that has been going on yesterday because they continue to actually slide under 11 ETH and pulled up all the way to almost 13 ETH. So at one point yesterday, we're up 30% and then have dropped down 1 ETH from there and are sitting at a 12.15 ETH floor right now. So there's been a bit of a recovery going on there. Miladies, on the other hand, they are down 8%, sliding under the 5 ETH floor and sitting at 4.75. Doodles, pretty similar story. Yes, there was a bit of an uptick going as high as 4.8 ETH yesterday from 4.5 as a result of that announcement that we're going to get into. But ultimately, they lost all of that quote-unquote momentum yesterday in the floor price and are down 2% to the 4.4 ETH floor. And finally, Azuki down another 10%, 3.4 ETH floor. That collection keeps sliding lower and lower, now down 71% over the last week since the airdrop. And taking a quick look at the anime token, performing very similarly, also down more than 70% and currently at 4.6 cents. which is a market cap of 252 and an FTV of 456 mil.
Pretty savage stuff going down there. Getting into Web3 Roundup, Consensus founder Joseph Lubin notes it is important for ETH to scale the base layer as it delivers the L2 roadmap. Sounds like Consensus is working on multiple fronts in order to deliver that. Interesting to note there. Movement Labs announces Cornucopia, a year-long program to jumpstart movement DeFi liquidity. Obviously, very interesting to note that Chain is obviously doing this big jumpstart for bootstrapping of liquidity at the moment for their chain. Movement seem to be doing something very similar. They're also partnered with Concrete, who are funded by Van Eck and Polychain. And so this seems to be the entity, or one of the entities, which is being backed to provide this kind of pre-deposit style vaults in order to start providing liquidity and probably start earning points and incentives. Syndicate Chain announces testnet is now live. Pump Fund deposit another 90,000 SOL to an exchange. Total earnings approach $600 million. What an outstanding take for Pump Fund. They just keep printing more and more money. WIF drops below $1 billion market cap before pumping 30% back to get to $1.30 today. Barstool Sports CEO David Portnoy reports he's looking into making a meme coin. I was speaking about this the other day about how, look, this stuff's going to keep moving fast and furious at the moment. These coins are going to keep coming right at you. Be just got to keep moving. AI16Z announces a rebrand to Eliza OS after a request from venture firm A16Z. Legendary. I remember we joked the first time it happened whether A16Z would be comfortable with this DAO coming up with their name. Clearly not. It's not okay to build your brand so adjacent to an already existing colossal company. X announces Visa as a first partner for X Money account, which will arrive later this year. That's the last piece of news I wanted to include, although not necessarily like core crypto. We're obviously very, very big on content creator stuff. We're very big on the X platform. That's where crypto Twitter is based. That's where we are most prominent. And I'm very, very fascinated with how X kind of move their money economy forward, and wonder whether to what extent that might include crypto at some point in time. So definitely watching the X money movement as well. But that's the Web3 Roundup to get you up to with everything else that's happened in the space. Before we get into a bigger discussion on the headlines, Legendary and Bread, is there anything that is catching your attention from the Roundup? Legendary first, then we go to Bread.
Definitely the Pump.Fund stuff, not only the 500 mil in fees, but also that post that Beanie had saying, so Pump Fund has made 500 million fees. And there's no billions worth of SOL permanently locked forever in liquidity pools of that Pump Fund. A pump and dump meme coins on Radium. It's likely the biggest and most extractive scam in crypto history. Retail traders absolutely destroyed by the meta. Don't want to get a discussion, is it a scam, isn't it a scam? But more so the interesting point is Solana still has like a relatively high inflation as a younger blockchain. And then you have, well, the fees are one part. They don't really matter because probably, they get set to Kraken and they get sold off either way. But the fact that so much liquidity and so much SOL is locked up in those Radium pools, and I'd love to see a number on that. I don't know if someone has pulled up a Dune dashboard on that. Is actually, it would be interesting to see if this, how much of the token inflation basically is getting eaten up by the dead SOL in liquidity pools. And if it's enough to even turn it deflationary or not, I have no idea, but I bet it's a sizable chunk.
It is a sizable chunk. I did the math. I don't know, it's probably 6 months ago at this point. Because I took like a totally dead coin that was like so dead it wasn't even on Dex Screener anymore. Like it had been unindexed, right? It was so dead. And I think it was something like $1,500 worth of SOL-ish in the pool, or like total in the pool, something like that. I did the math, and like even then it was kind of making an impact. And I remember hearing people over the last few weeks mentioning on certain big days it was effectively deflationary. Not because of coins launching, but for just like raw activity taking place. I'll see if I can do some numbers, but yeah, it's a large amount. Yes.
Is this, just so people can have like a reference point, Brad, is this the equivalent of, say, for example, in the 2021 cycle, is the equivalent of saying, yes, ETH is inflationary, but it's being spent so much and getting finding a destination finding a home in all of these NFTs, whether they're forgotten about. No, it's not the same.
No, not the same. So the underlying mechanisms of the chain are different, right? So Ethereum has a mechanism that whenever you spend something, 50% of it goes, like your gas, 50% of it actually literally gets destroyed, like it gets burned. And that's where the ultrasound money meme comes from. That with as activity picked up on the chain, the literal like issuance for block rewards of the day was less than the amount of money people spent using the chain that day and literally destroying Ethereum. Therefore, it was deflationary, right? The next day, there was less Ethereum in the circulation than, or not even in circulation, in existence than the day before. Whereas with Solana, there is no burn, but there are mechanisms in place here. Legendary is calling out these radium pools, right? So Pump Fund launched a token. It pairs the token with Solana, throws it in a liquidity pool. That liquidity pool sits at basically zero or next to zero permanently, right? You have to swap out this shit coin that was either lost, scammed, whatever, to actually obtain that soul. So it is effectively burned, but it is not literally burned. It would be like sending Ethereum to the zero address on Ethereum, right? Same concept. So he's saying that there's enough of that going on that, you know, through the cumulative impact of all of these pools, the amount of soul being created in the system, in the black box, is actually less day over day because a lot of it is being locked into things that are inaccessible to a degree.
And another Solana stat I quickly wanted to also pull up on that is total volume last 24 hours, $8.3 billion. NFT volume the last 24 hours, 1.6 mil. So 0.02% of volume on Solana is being caused by NFTs, which kind of gives you an idea of the
I'd like to see the ratio of that across chains to see like what Ethereum's ratio is versus Base's ratio versus Solana's. That'd be cool.
Fascinating. That's a really, really interesting point. I don't know if I've seen that articulated fully on the timeline. So if maybe if you had that all post, Brad, or an update to that post, I think would be fascinating reading. That'd be really interesting. I've got a separate point to talk about on these coins, but Brad, I wanted to come to you first. Anything else catching your attention? General points of interest from the Web3 Roundup, or just in general at the moment? What are you interested in?
I mean, obviously the infrastructure stuff from Lubin. Like, so Lubin used to be a founder of Ethereum, saying like, yeah, Ethereum needs to scale. I don't know if we actually talked about it, but the other day there was an interop call between all of the L2s where they had this like big rah moment. And Justin Drake posted on. Justin Drake's a big researcher in the Ethereum Foundation. He posted on. It's like, hey, we just had a call from like Base and Optimism and Arbitrum and, you know, Scroll, all these horizontally scaling L2s, horizontally implying that they are scaling in a way that requires them to play nice with other L2s. So you go wide instead of going high. Mega ETH is going high, so we don't care about other L2s. We don't have to care about other L2s. Solana would be seen as a horizontally or vertically scaling L1. Ethereum is a horizontally scaling L1. Anyways, they had a big call where all these people came together and said like, hey, we need, like, it's wartime mode. Like, we're all getting fucked, frankly. Like, we're getting fucked. We can't keep up. Like, L1 needs to scale if we're going to keep up. You know, you've seen Base and Jesse talking like, hey, we need to scale blobs. For people who don't know, blobs is like the restricting force right now of Base. Base is trying to scale further so that it can handle more transactions without increasing fees, trying to do all this shit, right? So they had a big wartime call. Everyone did a big rah-rah speech of like why they need to like cooperate and accelerate and come to an agreed upon standard, namely around being based and native. And for people who aren't familiar with what that means, it means like basically getting rid of the sequencer so that Ethereum becomes a sequencer. But yeah, so like Ethereum would potentially accrue some fees. You'd be able to interoperate with some of the assets on L1. It's a little harder. You lose some, like Base would lose the money that it's making on priority fees and shit, right? It would be giving that up potentially to Ethereum. So, but it's like a roadmap thing. It takes a while, whatever. So like Lubin talking about that is kind of in line with that, where he's just saying like, hey, Ethereum L1 needs to scale because if Ethereum L1 scales, then it allows us to interoperate better. It allows us to, you know, to play nicer with other L2s. It allows us to settle faster. It allows users to withdraw funds faster, all this shit. I'm happy to report that we don't give a shit about Ethereum L1 scaling. We can go as high as we want.
Love it. Fascinating stuff. I missed most of that meeting stuff. I didn't know that had happened. but it's very interesting. The interesting conversation I'd seen the L2 landscape go in just earlier today, I think, was people talking about like acquisitions and mergers of L2s at some point, right?
Yeah, I
Because,
made a post last night about before I went to sleep, and just like, hey, when these L2s die, what happens, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, one of these teams is going to go under. They're not going to be able to support themselves, right? Because they have to generate fees. And I made a post yesterday. The top, there's like a cluster of 8 L2s that over the last, I think it was 90 days, 60 days, 30 days, lost 40 grand, right? That they did not make money. So like it cost money to run the sequencer, like a couple thousand, maybe a week. So that's like 300 grand. Then you have, a team of DevOps engineers, you have your marketing budget, you have all this shit, right? That's probably approaching 6-7 figures, like high 6, definitely 7+ figures pretty easily on a run rate every year. Eventually these teams are they're gonna die. Some are gonna die because they're not based. There's a power law effect going on amongst L2s. Base, I made again another post, base eats up or creates like 60% of the transactions. If you knock out the top 6 L2s transactions, it goes down to under 1 TPS per L2 for the next like 40, right? Like that's crazy. One transaction per second, under 1 transaction per second for 40 across 40 rollups, right? And yeah, so like they're gonna die. So what happens then? Like does Ethereum CTO it, where you have to like just turn it based and you just like offload the sequencer? Does the actual community step in and like do a RAS, like a roll up as a service spin up, try to like spin up their own sequencer and shit, like kind of like Degen did, and like try to take over the chain? Does another L2 acquire it as like a acqui-hire, right? Do they buy the team? Do they buy the community, like a customer thing? It's going to happen within the next year, probably.
I had a discussion with BCG, Boston Consulting Group, on exactly that in December 2023. They said they are expecting this mass consolidation, as you perfectly described it, to happen. And they said there might be actually a niche in this market for someone to step in who's really good at integrating those not dead L2s, but too dead to stand on their own feet, and just doing that in a very effective, cost-efficient way. And by doing that, actually becoming relevant, because 100 half-dead L2s together still do create significant volume. So that's going to be interesting if someone's going to like specialize in exactly that. And also real quick, going back to the question that you had before, Brett, the comparison on NFT volume versus total volume for ETH mainnet versus Solana. So quickly, for Solana, we said that's 0.02%, 1.6 mil NFT volume versus 8 bill total volume. For ETH mainnet, total volume is at 2.3 bill, NFT volume is at 13 mil. So that's 0.5%, which is not a lot in like absolute numbers, but relatively speaking, that ratio is still 25 times higher than on Solana.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
Is that a question, Brad?
Yeah, why do you think that is?
Because
we see numbers, it's clearly disjointed. Why? Like, what is leading to that?
Yeah, I think because we have Pudgies with the airdrop that caused a lot of volume. We have Doodles. We had the Miladies run, and all of those collections do have a very, very significant price. That even a Pudgy at 25, 30 ETH was trading at almost 100 grand. So that volume has accumulated quickly. And even in the sell-off now, like if a lot of people are dumping their Pudgies all the way from 17 to 10 ETH, that still creates volume. Volume is not only created obviously by people buying something they want to have, but also by dumping it. And I do think that the token speculations, plus the fact that ETH always was the home of NFTs and it is where the NFT cycle lived out last time, still carries more relevance.
Interesting stuff. Look, I just have one tweet to share because I was curious to get your guys' thoughts on it, and then we're going to get into the main headlines in just a second. This was a tweet by Vance Spencer, GP at Framework, which is a crypto venture firm, kind of just laying out the state of the situation, and I think kind of asking some questions of our perspective on where we are at the moment. He said this: many paradoxes in the crypto discourse at the moment. Alts are dead, and yet we've produced multiple decacorns, unicorns recently. Trenches are dead, but Pump Fund has launched 7 million coins and earns $4 million a day. Fundamentals don't matter, but buyback coins are outperforming. Meme supercycle, but not any of yours. I thought it was interesting because there's some things which I think people would definitively believe to be true there, but then the logical conclusion is not what people are coming to. Like, so a couple that hit me, I'd be curious for your guys' thoughts, is people keep saying that the trenches are cooked, or that it's like super hard, or that it's, you know, it's really difficult, right? But I mean, not just reporting there that pump funds earning $4 million a day, you know, they just took out another 90,000 Sol. Their complete earnings this year have just, I can't remember the number in my tweet from this morning. It is, the total earnings are approaching $600 million. So there's just a few things here that made me think twice. Like, you know, alts are dead. Are they dead? But like, you know, literally 2-3 days ago, that Venice token went to 2 bill. Like, it just came out of the gate and went to 2 billion straight away. No gas, no brakes, just all the way there. And okay, fine, it's pulled back to maybe 1 now. It's still a $1 billion token. Fundamentals don't matter. People always say that in this space. And yet you've got coins like Hype looking incredibly strong with the buybacks that they're performing. You've got coins like Jupiter, when they've announced their buybacks just a couple of days ago, you know, really performing outstandingly well. Excellent product, strong kind of buyback incentives. What do we think here? Go to you, Legendary, first, then Brad. What are your reflections here?
I think the main difference is the sheer amount of tokens that we have, whether that's, you know, the meme side, the pump fund side with literally millions of tokens versus, I don't know, a handful of memes that we had last cycle, the velocity of that. And just, I don't know, think back 2018, EOS back then, biggest ICO ever, biggest raise ever. EOS raised 4.4 billion. They raised, not at a 4 billion valuation, they raised $4.4 billion in 2018. We are so far away from the crazy numbers. It is literally, and I think it's currently trading at 1 bill market cap or FTV, somewhere in that range. So we don't have this anymore. We don't have like the one project that's like spearheading everything else and absorbing all the liquidity. I think if you look at chain raises these days, Zero G probably being in the top spot with 300 to 400 mil raised, which is a very large amount. But EOS raised 4.4 billion. And now what has happened is that we've distributed all that money, the entire liquidity across so many verticals, coins, memes. You still have meme runners every day. A friend of mine posted the runner of the night, like he does that daily, and he said it went from, he said it did 0 to 40 M in 10 minutes. And I was like, this is basically, we talk about meme coins like they're sports cars. This can go from 0 to 50 in 6 minutes. It's literally that level of absurdity. And this kind of makes many people who are not a part of that, meme super cycle is on, but not any of yours, feel like everyone's winning because there's so many different winners, but my tokens are not winning. And I feel like that's the same for alts, because even the case with, you mentioned Venice. Yes, Venice did run from 0 to 2 billion within 2 hours, but it also dumped heavily right now. So as you said, you call this the hard mode. If you're like 1 hour late to that and you buy the top, you're screwed the next day. And I feel like this juxtaposition leads to that, statement or that post that Vance has described pretty accurately, that everything is kind of pumping, but you also feel it's not your bags that are pumping, and you have a different experience.
That dispersion actually connects really well. I listened to the 1000X podcast, which has some big traders on it. And they they're saying there's going to be no alt cycle because of the dispersion that Legendary is talking about, right? Like there's so many coins, there's literally just not enough capital to lift all of the coins, right? There's so much, and you like this. The same story is true in the opposite direction, right? Everyone said like AI directionally, you could have been correct. AI as a narrative is a thing, absolutely cooked, right, over the last year. But if you bought Tau like a year ago, you're underwater, right? Because you missed all the AI agents, and that was like the index play on this shit, right? So so it's you can be directionally correct, but you're gonna have to pick your winners within that subset and stay aware of your winners if you're gonna actually try to do that stuff. It's the same in both directions. Like they're mentioning trenches are cooked, but some are running. Well, yeah, but AI is crushing, but only if you pick the right ones. Like you have to get both of those things correct.
Excellent point. Definitely wanted to bring that up because I thought that'd be an important one to discuss. Right, let's get into the main stuff then today. Some very interesting headlines to get into. I think, Brad, you are going to start us off with Movement Labs. what's going on here. Big news for Movement.
Yeah, this one's actually just a pretty quick headline. It was Movement Labs moved on a acquisition from World Liberty Fi of their token. So the you can see Rishi, who is the founder of Movement, he's commenting on the what was the total purchase price? It was a couple $1 million worth of move to World Liberty Fi. And this again came in conjunction with a rumor from the terminal that Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency run by Elon Musk, was in talks with Movement to like implement blockchain features for, again, government efficiency. So it was just a combination of stuff coming out of the political sphere that was signaling towards Move, specifically a Movement. Rishi, who was, you said the picture, he was recently on Bloomberg, or no, it wasn't Bloomberg, it was some morning show to just talk about, made in America, we're coming back. Like there's a little bit of bull posting, frankly, of DeFi and American born founders and innovation coming back to the States under a new administration. So just a confluence of notable events, specifically around Move. Chain's not live yet, so TBD on how much of this stuff actually gets implemented. Rishi said he hasn't had any conversations with the actual administration on this stuff, but early days. So maybe that comes.
Excellent. To the point summary, Brad. Thank you for that. Follow-up question for me. We're obviously not stateside. Maybe this is something either yourself, being given that you're building at Mega ETH, and I can see Funky's hand is raised already. I was going to go to him too. Question is, what do we think? How do we feel about price action being determined by, government, potential integration? Do we think that is do we have a specific view on that? Is it to be encouraged?
It's good for distribution. It's the same thing that is there same you don't have a token on Base to correlate it to, but it's the same thing as why everyone went and built on Base, because they knew Coinbase distribution was coming, right? They would shield it to people, they could get exposure in the wallet, all that stuff, right? It's the exact same thing, but it would be on a larger scale, I would assume, depending on how forward they are with it. If they're forcing people literally to use the shit, right? That's distribution, that's free marketing, that's free exposure, that's free whatever on a large scale, right? If they're shoving it down our throats on a federal level, right? That's just bullish broadly. You would think people would then trickle in, understand it, get comfortable with it, and then acquire it as a move. So it's not a pure technical thing. I'm not bullish on the government making us vote on Move. That's a 4-year thing that's going to take a couple million transactions. That's a fucking nothing burger in this space. We have $9 billion flying around on Solana right now, right? So as far as usage goes, zero. As far as distribution goes and awareness and normalization, good, bullish.
Legendary, did you want to come in? No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, straight to Funky then. Appreciate those thoughts, Brad. Funky, what are you thinking here on Movement's potential integration into Doge, or just the general way that was kind of communicated? There was also the World Liberty Fi buys not long after the news came out. What are you thinking?
GM fam, yeah, this is really interesting because I just put it in the comments below. The night of the crypto ball, there was a picture of Rishi standing shoulder to shoulder with David Sachs. And he is the new crypto czar for those of you who are not in America and don't understand what's happening. So I'm not the least bit surprised. More importantly, I feel that Rishi and Cooper, because a lot of times we just talk about Rishi, but Cooper's the other co-founder, is doing such a great job as a founder, right? We know that one of the things that is very true is that founders who are vocal, who are on the timeline, who are always talking up their projects, tend to do very well. He's captured the right attention. And I think what people are really sleeping on is that Movement is really trying to complete the mission that was started under the Libra umbrella with Facebook. If you look at Rishi's posts, if you look at what they're trying to accomplish, they're trying to kind of bring to life the vision of Libra. Even in that same ball, he talked about $600 million worth of Move BTC. So like, is there going to be a wrapped Move BTC on that chain? You know, there's just so many things lining up, and that would go along with the cornucopia and what they're trying to build with the DeFi stuff this coming year. And Brad just pointed out, I think Rushi just said that mainnet is officially live today. So I feel like between trying to create that vision of what Libra was when it was first incubated under Facebook back in 2018 or whatever it was, when it was finally killed off, and making it a very consumer facing focused kind of chain, is really, really bullish just for everything. And then it's also on the list of Made in America coins, right? And so many others are. And I think that those are going to stand a very good chance, especially if the 0% capital gains tax that Eric Trump kind of said is coming is going to be good for all those tokens, Move and others as well. So really exciting times.
Interesting stuff, Funk. I just wanted to share, building on that, you mentioned BTC being one of the core assets, or I think that's what you mentioned. You know how lots of these chains are kind of going live at the moment with different incentives, different ways for you to kind of try to provide liquidity and get incentivized to do that. I mentioned Concrete, this protocol, which is backed by, I'm just showing this on the screen for people who are watching in, backed by Polychain and VanEck. And they are one of the protocols that allow you to enter into Bearer Chain. They're also one of the protocols that are going to be facilitating your entry into Movement Labs. It's called a cornucopia vault. And the three assets, well, this is interesting given what Funky just said, and also the fact that these assets are not all there when other chains go live. Concrete will be hosting three core assets: stablecoins, that's common; Move, obviously it's the native token; and Bitcoin, across a variety of leading asset issuers. So it's just not always the case that Bitcoin is part of that mix at the beginning, and it seems to be increasingly moving forward. So just wanted to bring that up. I don't think there's anything more to say on movement today, although delighted to announce we'll be having Rushi on the show in a couple of weeks' time as well. We have him booked for an interview, which we're very much looking forward to do. So if we have more questions, I guess we'll think about them and ask them then. Let's keep it moving though. Legendary, we are going to go to your headline, which is on Bitcoin. Bitcoin Reserve, the new noises coming out that are potentially quite bullish.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the small leak of the call sheet that you have prepared that was on the screen for a second. Interesting behind the scenes look into the modern market. Anyhow, getting into the headline, it's actually a double headline. We, on the one hand, have Senator Cynthia Loomis having an interview with Fox Business that I'm sharing on screen, where she's talking about the plans for the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And there's a couple of things to note there. So first of all, you said it at the top of the show, 200,000 BTC, that is $20 billion or $22 billion at current prices to be purchased annually over the next 5 years. So more than 100 bill at current prices to be purchased worth of BTC. The goal is to acquire 5% of all BTC and hold it for at least 20 years. What's the idea behind that? She's talking about that in an interview and saying that the asset goes up, they hold 5% of the supply. It could have the US national debt in 20 years. And the second piece of news that I kind of want to connect to this before I give more of my thoughts on that is coming out of the Czech Republic with plans of the Czech central bank to purchase BTC. This is actually an interesting one. So what are they thinking about? They are thinking about putting 5% of the 140 billion euro reserve, that is 7 billion euro, that is roughly 7.3 billion USD, to purchase BTC at current prices. That would roughly be 71,000 BTC. So a bit more than a third of what the US wants to purchase a year, or what Cynthia Loomis is talking about. Still a very, very significant amount to put 5% of your reserve as a central bank into BTC. And also what's very interesting to see is that the Czech National Bank is actually one of the more, I would say, modern national banks in at least the European context, because as a national bank, they're already holding 22% of the portfolio in equities, which is a lot for a national bank. Like national bank, typically, if you look at a global average, national banks hold around 6% of their portfolio in equities, which across the globe, according to State Street, equals roughly 800 billion in equities that are being held by national banks. So yes, the Czech one is a bit more modern. It's not as quote unquote conservative in the strategy as others because they hold 3.5 times more in equities than your average national bank does. But still, them thinking about the move, and also, as part of the reasoning, talking about what is happening in the States, is exactly that connection that we had with the conversation on the show yesterday with Rahim, that ultimately we see things like Nvidia, the stock price tanking 20%, but BTC still holding well above 100K. So, and we see the US very openly talking about, as we just said it with Senator Cynthia Lummis, about their strategic Bitcoin reserve. So it's not surprising to see other countries, other national banks now coming out, and the Czech Republic in this case being one of the first to be that vocal about it, that they have an interest in following through with that plan. Obviously, it takes a series of approvals to get there, so it's not going to happen today or tomorrow, but definitely very, very positive to see one of the European central banks to have this view. Maybe just as an additional context, Czech Republic is part of the European Union, but it is one of the 7 countries in the European Union that's not part of the Eurozone, so they don't have the euro as the currency.
Yeah, I don't begrudge anyone not from Europe not understanding the different European zones, the Schengen zone, the geographic, actual, literal continent that is. We're divided up in different ways. There's many definitions of Europe. But to your point on timing, the tweet was shared by David Bailey, who is the CEO of Bitcoin Magazine, and he was just making the point, like, look, these other people it's at the forefront of their thinking as well. They're going to be planning to allocate up to 5% of reserves to Bitcoin. The United States can't wait 6 months. We need to go now. I think there probably is a little bit of a sense of urgency as other people start to consider it, which is, I guess good for the asset, or that's what we're thinking anyway. Let's keep it moving. We've got 12 minutes left on the show. We wanted to get into the final headline for the day, and as usual, when Doodles is about to be mentioned, I always see, and I'm pretty sure he's with us quite often, but it's always right in my eye line, the upside down pickle that is Austin in the Twitter Spaces, good friend of the show, prominent member of the strategy team at Doodles, to talk about Doodles. So, this is the headline that came out yesterday. It was Doodles announcing a change of CEO, with the founder Burnt Toast stepping back into the role. He had this to say. He said, "I'm stepping back in as CEO of Doodles. We're moving to a vision with a strong bias for risk, disruption, radical transparency, and the authenticity that made us who we are in the first place." He said, "Ideas transform societies. Today, the disruptors come in many forms. NFTs rewriting ownership. Keepers. These aren't trends. They're real engines of value, and we'll wield them like a flamethrower." Now, this is where he went on, what he went on to say, which I think caused a little bit of certainly created a reaction on the timeline. "Execution isn't just code or partnerships, it's culture too. The extractive corpo era of Doodles is over. We thank Julian for his contributions to the Doodles legacy, but enough talk, let's cook. Big things are coming." So the founder stepping back into the CEO seat, a little bit of a parting shot, I would say, towards the former corporate era of Doodles. Just want to go to good friend of the show and audience member Steve here, who I think wrote a really thoughtful post, a pretty fair post, kind of trying to consider both sides here. He thought the same wording, that was his reaction, was basically my initial reaction as well. He took that one particular line and said, "The extractive corpo era of Doodles is over, intended or not. It feels like a parting shot at Julian. He deserves better than that. Julian was making big moves, connecting with top tier artists, building partnerships with major brands, and pushing Doodles beyond our corner of the internet." Kind of goes on to say, like, look, there's obviously things that go on behind the scenes. We don't know the full story. The Doodles team itself is arguably the best in Web3. Every single person I know who works there, without exception, is smart, hardworking, creative, and collaborative. That's certainly been my experience of not just meeting Austin, for example, who's with us in the audience, but also just Doodles community members are awesome. I've met a bunch in real life at various conferences around the world. So I think that's fair to say. But, you know, the gut reaction seems to be actually a little bit of disappointment. I think people on the outside, and to be clear, I want to be clear about that as well. I'm definitely an outsider to the Doodles community. I watch what they do. I think it's cool, but I've never really been on the inside. It seemed like they were doing some pretty cool stuff. Like, I think the media stuff was really cool. They've definitely hit some real home runs, actually, I think, in the last year or so. So that's where we are there. That is the news. Brett, maybe going to you first on the NFT side here. What is your reflection on, I guess there's two directions to take it. One, the specific stuff and Doodles, and maybe the separate segment is either for you or Legendary, which is, you know, kind of original NFT founders taking some time away and then coming back in after someone else has been at the helm for a bit.
You know, I can only speak to my personal interpretation of this stuff because I'm kind of like you. I'm outside the community, but like just observing the brand itself. Like Doodles to me always had a little bit of a pudgy vibe to them, where it's just like let them cook. They're operating at a different level than a lot of stuff, right? They acquired Golden Wolf. They had a lot of professional connections within the project, right? They, you know, Pharrell coming on board, all this stuff, right? And high quality work coming out of the stuff. And it's kind of just like, you just have to let them cook and eventually it would bubble to the top, because a lot of the foundation that they're laying was very large in scope, right? So like that stuff just takes time, right? They're building out a lot of actual teams and stuff, and hearing the team talk on podcasts and various other media outlets, like they're very articulate in what their vision was, and like, you know, just like let us cook, frankly. So it was kind of surprising. Like my reaction was just to the corpo extractive thing, kind of like what Steve was when he was like, it's not nice. Like it's a pretty direct way to say that stuff, which is like, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but that's how it reads as someone that's coming through here. And like, I get the desire to want to say the thing, to like come back to the Web3 native. I don't know that Web3 native is a requirement, but it's like, it's certainly helpful. It's working for Pudgy to like straddle that line. But it was just it was a pretty strong wording. Yeah, that's what shocked me there. And like it reveals that like I would have had no like thought of that as Doodles being an extractive entity, and now that he's saying that, now I have a little bit of that perception in my mind of like that was what's been bothering them for a long time. So maybe it's ultimately beneficial to think like, okay, now it's a new paradigm. But yeah, just outsider commentary.
Fair enough. Interesting thoughts. Legendary, coming to you. Either any further commentary here or moving in the direction of, you know, I think there's been, you know, there's obviously a couple of examples of founders who came up in 2021, experienced extreme success either at the end of 2021 into 2022. Then as things either got too successful, and then also the bear market hit, you know, I think structural changes were made across the board in a variety of ways. And then some people have come back into the fold a little bit later. Any reflections on that, or any other reflections here?
Yeah, we had Yuga Labs, Cool Cats, Doodles with non-Web3 native CEO stepping in. I agree with the sentiment. I feel like that Julian did, actually, for someone who's not natively Web3, an awesome job of trying to understand the culture and what is going on in Web3, which I imagine to be a very, very hard job. I think with, what was his name? With Yuga Labs, the former Activision CEO. Daniel
Allegro.
Yeah, Daniel Allegro, who stepped in, and then basically the whole timeline was turning against him. And I think it was Beanie who said, like, imagine you are the CEO of one of the biggest gaming studio in the world. You step in, you see this new venture, you think, oh, this is going to be interesting. We have a shot of building a new big, like gigantic gaming studio, and then you have a bunch of people attacking you daily on the timeline because their cartoon pictures are down and are dumping more. And that's something you're not used to. You're not used to, as a CEO of a like publicly traded company, that you have shareholders attacking you daily on X, or you have so many layers of protection between you that this stuff is not getting to you. And we are like way more direct, hands-on, and everyone is like talking directly to the founder, subtweeting or tweeting at the founder. And this doesn't like exist in that form in a typical corporate environment. So I feel like that maybe is like one of the things, that this cultural massive difference. And then there's like also the thing, you know, there's like different types of founders for different things. There's the one who is like actually founding the company. Then there's one who's good to scale the company, one who's good to like run an already scaled company in a very efficient way. And there's like barely any person who can fill all those three roles. So what is like interesting probably to see if you're the founder of an NFT project, and you're like, you know, stepping to the side to let someone else in who has at least more managerial experience than you, even if they don't have the cultural fit. There's still probably a lot of to see and observe. And then if you've watched that for a time and you think, you've learned something, and there's some things you liked and some things you didn't like, and probably the things you didn't like are weighing heavier because otherwise you wouldn't step back in. You have had enough time to, you know, think through what you want to do. Because if you're like the founder who's the acting CEO of the company, and you have all those people tweeting at you, there's probably not a lot of time to like think through leadership styles, managerial styles, the strategy, etc. So maybe like sidestepping is also kind of fostering, fueling creativity in a way, and allows you to come back with not only fresh energy, but like with a new perspective on things. And yeah, on the other stuff with that comment, that line, I don't know, was unnecessary. Taking shots is, I don't think, is the right play to do, no matter if that was intentional or not. Just wasn't a good look.
Okay, yeah, interesting set of points. I'm wondering, has there been any success? I mean, maybe that was the wrong question. I was going to ask, has there been any successful examples of these kind of takeovers, switchovers, changeovers of control? But then if you actually think about it, to your point, Legendary, it doesn't necessarily mean that when one takeover happens and then it changes, doesn't mean necessarily it was a failure, right? Because the things that could be achieved in that period of time could be very successful. And then for the direction that the company then wants to go in the next 6, 12 months, 18 months, 24, few years, that person who has achieved those successful things might not be the right person for the next set. So I think it would be incorrect. I'm kind of talking my own thinking out through here, because I was going to ask the question, well, why is it not working? That's probably the wrong question, because it's not that it's not working. It's just, I think sometimes the business models of these companies are changing so fast, or the focuses change, because this industry kind of moves so fast, that like there could very foreseeably be a right person for the next 12 to 18 months, and then they could not be the right person for the next 18 months. I have no idea whether that's the case in this specific scenario. Obviously, we're speaking slightly more generally here about like companies and how they evolve over time. But, you know, to maybe get a little bit more insight, you know, as we're coming to close the show, delighted to welcome Austin up on stage with us, Head of Strategy and Business Development at Doodles. Austin, great to have you with you. Great to have you with us, my friend. How are you doing? And what are your reflections on some of our commentary here, on the news? What would you like to share?
Yeah, GM everyone. I will keep it short and sweet, because I know you're at the end of the show and everyone's got other things that they gotta start getting to do. But no, I mean, I think the reflections, just like high level points. You know, BT has been a part of Doodles obviously since day one. We are fortunate in the fact that, like, as the co-founder, he has been here every step of the way. He's been overseeing creative. He's been leading Golden Wolf. He's been tied directly to Julian in all key major decisions. So it's not like he was not, like, he left by any means and came back. He's always been very, like, at the forefront of the company. I think in regards to the statement, like, look, I'll let him ultimately speak to his words, but I know in some of the conversations that we had last night, and some of the reflections, you know, he really saw that as more of a reflection on the entire company, not on any individual. And it is feedback of just, like, you know, taking the bitter pill that we've gotten sometimes historically, some moves that we've been making to really grow the pie for everyone, to be, you know, very, like, brand forward and Web2 forward in some respects. And sometimes those moves have been taken, I think, by Web3 natives as, like, extractive or too corporate or things like that. And what he was really trying to nail home, and I think it got lost, and, you know, this will just be something, you know, he learns from, we all learn from. But he was really just trying to land the plane on the fact that, like, we are a Web3 company. We are here to build for Web3 natives. None of the Web2 type activations that we did last year are going anywhere, but the way in which we bring them to market, the way in which we see value for the community will look very different. It will look like we are building directly for the people that are here today and then bringing and growing the pie outwards versus trying to attract from the outside and bringing them in. But I'll be jumping on a bunch. I know, like, again, that we're over time. I'm happy to do a follow-up with you guys or anything, but yeah, just wanted to jump up and, say I appreciate you guys talking about it and everything. We're excited to keep building, and the team is fully behind BT, and we've got a really fun next chapter.
Sounds awesome, man. Well, appreciate you very much for jumping up as well and contributing. Very helpful kind of additional insight there, Austin. Awesome to have you with us as always. As you said, though, that is our show for the day. We do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour live on X video, YouTube, and Apple and Spotify podcasts as well, if you prefer to catch up over there. Thanks, as always, to Legendary and Brad for co-hosting with me. Thanks for Funky for contributing, and Austin for jumping up, head of strategy at Doodles. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.